Hi everyone, my name's Esther Gent. I'm the fostering manager at Battersea across the 3 sites. That means that day to day I'm responsible for the overall running of the scheme and also for the support and recruitment of our 325 foster carers. It's really exciting that we've got a cat expert here to talk to us today. Vicky Halls is a great friend of Battersea and she has around 30 years of experience working with cats. Vicky is a registered veterinary nurse. She's also a full member of the Association of Pet Behaviour Counsellors and a registered clinical animal behaviourist. Lindsay Quinlan is also here today assisting. You may all know her, and so she'll be helping Vicky to give her talk. But please join me in giving Vicky a round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther, and good morning, everyone. It's an absolute honour to be here to talk to you today, to be part of an event that praises that 9% of the population who gives so much to volunteering. It was a lovely talk this morning that Carl gave about the wonderful work that you do, so I feel very, very humble. So lovely to be here. And I decided to talk today about common misconceptions and challenging facts. And when I sort of thought, oh, well, I'll make my slide, you know how you do, you get your pictures off the internet, and so I'm going to make a nice starting slide. And I went on the internet, and the first thing I found was a cat who was terrified of a cucumber. So I thought I'd put that on, and then I saw a cat who was dressed up like a shark and whizzing around on a hoover. And then there were loads of pictures of cats looking like somebody's nose and moustache, so I thought I'd put that on as well. And then I found a kitten that was dressed like a bat. And I found, of course, Grumpy Cat and Lil Bub. And you know what? I sat there for a while and I felt really quite sorrowful because I thought, my goodness, people are putting unusual objects in front of their cat to scare them for the sake of entertainment. And I thought, I wonder what could possibly go through the mind of that rather flat and subdued cat dressed as a shark sitting on a vacuum cleaner. And then I thought about Grumpy Cat. Grumpy Cat, as you know, is a cat with dwarfism. Little short legs, and he looks like that not because, or she looks like that, I should say. Her name is Tartar Sauce. She looks like that because she has a congenital abnormality that has changed the conformation of her face. And then Little Bub. I looked at Little Bub over there, and she's got more congenital problems you can shake a stick at. But she's earned millions of pounds for her owner on the internet. So I looked at that and I thought, my goodness, this is the species I've devoted my life to, and I respect the species and I love it, and I just wonder where we're going. So that's kind of... So I started a bit crestfallen, but I perked up, don't worry. So Esther's sort of given you a potted thing on me, and I just thought this is like my little CV about the things I do. And the only reason why I'm putting it down here is the fact that you can see I approach the whole world of cats from lots of different directions. And I've been doing it, as Esther reminded me, quite shockingly, for 30 years now. And the one thing that I can tell you 30 years down the line is I feel I know so little about the species. There is so much still to learn. And I'd love to share that sort of inquiring nature with you and let you realise how much there is that we can actually know about cats. And it's quite apparent how highly regarded you all are by Battersea, and rightly so. But of course we have to look at it the other way round, how fortunate you are to work with an organisation such as Battersea. And I can say this because I'm independent and impartial, but they are absolutely leading this sector in cat welfare and best practice in what they do. Their stress management, headed beautifully by Lindsay, is second to none. Staff training is amazing. All this information and knowledge they have, they're passing on to you. And of course, Lindsay is doing such an exquisitely perfect job of managing occupancy, which I'll be talking about a little bit in a moment, reducing the length of stay of all those cats who are with you, increasing the departure rate, and therefore increasing their welfare. So this is absolutely cutting-edge stuff, and you should be very proud to be part of it. I also want to introduce you to cat-friendly homing, which I've been talking to Lindsay about. I think it must be about 7 or 8 years now. It seems to be going on forever. But I came to her one day with an initiative that International Cat Care had been talking about, let's have let's see how well we can do this. And I shared some stuff with her then, and Lindsay, as she always does, looked at it and thought, that makes sense to me, and off she runs. And a lot of the wonderful work she's been doing has that in the back of her mind, and she's developed it and created something very beautiful. But cat-friendly homing is all about maximising homing of cats based on best possible knowledge of cats and their welfare. And it's about selective admission. I don't mean sort of picking and choosing. I mean making sure the right cats come in that actually you can get the appropriate outcome for. Best practice housing and handling, constant monitoring so that when they're with you, you're maintaining and improving welfare, and awful careful matching to potential new owners or whatever the best outcome is for them. So that's a bit of a wordy sort of tome. Cat-friendly homing has 10 guiding principles, basically. These are the principles, not particularly catchy, but basically what they're saying is take in the right amount of cats, make sure the cats you take in, you can actually give them the right outcome and they wouldn't be better off left where they are with some management. Find out as much as you can about them, keep them healthy while you've got them there with you. Understand that this is not a picnic for them when they are with you. So recognise the signs of when things are not going quite so well and do something about it. Making sure that as many homing opportunities are found as possible. And I love the stuff that Robin is doing, looking for outlets. I think it was Carl that was talking about that this morning. It was really exciting, all the sort of things that people are doing behind the scenes, which is wonderful. Obviously, still doing the population control stuff with unwanted litters, microchipping. If you do have litters, rearing them properly so they make good pets and are happy to be them. And of course, giving lots of support to owners and making sure that when they take the cat on for the first time, they understand that there will be a bit of a settling in period. Keep records, know everything you possibly can about the cats and have it written down somewhere and constantly review what you're doing. Could we be doing better? What can we be doing in light of new information, new knowledge? All very exciting. And quite by coincidence, over the other side of the pond, the US has been developing something fairly similar with the help of Maddie's fund, and it's called the Million Cat Challenge. And their challenge is to save 1 million cats from euthanasia as soon as possible based on these principles. And you look at them, they've got 5, much more catchy than ours: alternatives to intake, managed admission, capacity for care, removing adoption barriers, and return to field. And what they're doing is using those principles and sharing them with as many people as want to listen in order to save these 1,000 lives. So it's really interesting. Quite independently, these have been developed, but it's clearly something that's moving the rehoming sector worldwide, which is very exciting. But in order to promote welfare, we have to gain knowledge. We have to understand what welfare looks like to a cat. And sometimes that involves dispelling common misconceptions and facing challenging facts, which is why I call this talk Common Misconceptions and Challenging Facts. Can you all read that? Basically, the sweet man is saying, "Hey, cat," and the cat's going, "Meow." He says, "You know what the best thing about you is? I can talk to you about anything, and I know you won't judge me." "Thanks," he says. And then the cat's at the bar with his mate and saying, "My human is weird, dude." And the other one is saying, "They all are." So I just thought, well, that speaks 1,000 words. So, okay, the first common misconception, well, really the first challenging facts, and I know this sounds like I am stating the obvious, is a cat is not a small dog, and it's not a small person in a zip-up furry coat. Now, for many years, the cat was treated as a small dog in veterinary medicine. But over the past 25 and 30 years, wonderful things have happened. And now we have feline specialists and we have practices devoted to the care of that species alone. And they've done wonderful, wonderful things. So now, breathe a sigh of relief. At last, the cat isn't thought of as a small dog in veterinary medicine. I find that picture very alarming. It's beyond weird, I agree with you. That really is quite unpleasant. But there are a lot of people who, although they know, of course, the cat is not a small person, will treat them as such and expect them to have the same thoughts and feelings as we do. Once or twice I say to people, "You know your cat isn't a little person." And they look at me like I've said something very strange and said, "Well, they are." where'd you go with that? So, moving on. Common misconception, let's start. There'll be 3 of each, just randomly out of the blue. Common misconception number 1. The best place for all cats is with people who love them. Now, when you hear that, you think, yeah, that's what I think. And then, all cats? Okay, let's just get something absolutely straight. Do cats need people? Let's be honest about this. Do they need us? We know how we feel about them. They have no biological requirement for social relationships of any kind. They are solitary predators. They are solitary survivalists. However, if they are reared with humans, cats may benefit enormously from the social interaction with them. So this is what we need to remember. Under very specific circumstances, yeah, things could be absolutely fantastic. So, and this is the truth of the matter. Not all cats are pets. These are all members of the same species, Felis catus, but they're not all pets. Some of them look more like pets than others. But not only are they not pets, they wouldn't enjoy being one. So we have these ideas, yes, like just a bit of love and a bit of central heating and some lovely food, and this cat will be as happy as anything. No, actually, you probably make the cat healthier physically, but emotionally, my goodness, who knows? The International Society of Feline Medicine produced some guidelines on population management in conjunction with the American Association of Feline Practitioners. And what they were trying to show is the fact that the species has an enormous spectrum of lifestyle. And so they showed us the feral cats, the free-living cats who have no contact with humans, they're very rarely seen. They avoid direct contact with humans, in fact. Then we have the street or community or farm cats. Sometimes they're referred to as the semi-feral, not quite feral, not quite pets. So these are the street cats who live around humans and capitalise on a food source that's provided either intentionally or unintentionally by humans. And then there's the stray or abandoned population where they've probably lived in a home at some stage, but they're free living now and they could have all various ranges of human contact. And then we've got the household cats. These are the cats that some people call pets or companion animals. And these are the ones who live with humans, they're cared by humans, they can live on their own, usually full or part-time in a house, sometimes with others as well. So that just shows you the broad spectrum. But just to make things even more complicated, and I don't know whether you've experienced this yourselves in your work within the cattery, that not all pet cats are actually socialised. So they may have come from a pet cat home. You may say, well, this cat's definitely a pet because it comes from a pet cat home. But on further examination with the previous owner, they say, yes, well, he's never really been a lap cat. Actually, in fact, he either spends all day outside, just comes in for food, or lives under the bed. You suddenly realise, I wonder whether this cat was ever properly socialised in the first place. So you can see there's an awful lot of sort of investigative work you have to do to actually establish what this cat is all about. I want to tell you Zabka's story, okay? Now, Zabka, there she is. And that was the only photograph her previous owner had managed to take of her. And she looks, to all intents and purposes, like a perfectly happy little cat sitting with her companion at the back of the bed. Well, that's probably as close as the owner was ever allowed to get, and she'd had her from a kitten. So she was very excited about that photograph. She'd never touched her. Now, Zabka came from Harrods. When Harrods had a pet store, Zabka is a toiger, which I don't know whether you know about these things. Toiger is sort of like, well, to me, for my ignorance, and excuse it, looks like a tabby cat. But apparently, they're sort of like Bengals, but to look like tigers. Yeah? Okay? And she was bought at a huge expense by my client's husband and brought home to their very swanky glass and marble penthouse apartment in central London. And I was called in. The vet was very concerned about this kitten because since her arrival, she'd found the top of a wardrobe and pretty much stayed up there. And when I met her, she was trembling. She was absolutely petrified. So, of course, I didn't sort of go anywhere near her. The saving grace is that little white cat, who is the lady's other cat. And actually Zabka got through because of that white cat, and they formed quite a good bond, which existed mostly at night when the owners were asleep. It was very difficult. From day one, I said to the owner, look, you know, I don't think, for whatever reason, we've got a socialised kitten here. So it's a little bit like having a fox in your home. You know, they just don't belong there, and she's very unhappy. But she wouldn't have it, you know, working on the basis, I got this cat and I'm going to stick with her because I love her. So we kind of parted company for a couple of years. You know, I did my best, and sometimes I don't always succeed in these things. And so life went on, and then she very fortunately became pregnant. And she realised, you know, this, I can't. I think now is the time to let Zabka go. So she contacted me, and I thought, well, you know, how has Zabka progressed? Well, clearly she hadn't progressed. And lovely Lindsay agreed to take her on. And this is what Lindsay and the team in London actually were confronted with. There's no sound. I've blocked the sound of this video so that you can see, and this is quite distressing to see. You know, when you see her face in a minute, I hope you can see the subtlety of it. She is absolutely frozen with fear. She is terrified, and almost she's gone to her happy place, if you know what I mean. She's so traumatised, she's drifted off to somewhere else. She's disassociated with what's going on. Absolutely, Sarah, she's shut down. Okay? And Lindsay knew immediately what had to be done there. And remember, this was a very expensive 4-figure pet cat from Harrods. And to Lindsay's eternal credit and the credit of the team, this is where Zabka ended up. And this is her. And she looks like a different cat. She looks kind of normal in the nicest way possible. And what Lindsay found was this wonderful outlet home for her, where somebody had a bit of an abandoned mobile home and said, well, we can keep her in there and we can feed her and make her realise this is where her core area is, and then she's free to roam. And when she was allowed out, she almost immediately made friends with cats, not with people. She made friends, she went around, and there she is, just glimpsed in the distance, probably all zoomed in to take the photograph, just saying, yeah, I'm okay, thanks for this. So I see that very much as an enormous success story about a case that for some years had bothered me. So I'm very pleased now to see a final conclusion to it. So this really ties into the cat-friendly homing guiding principles in those two sort of points specifically. Only admit, and in this case Lindsay had to admit, but she knew it would be for the shortest time possible. So make sure that if you do take them in and they need an outlet, you get them out as soon as possible and find out as much as you can. So Lindsay was not fooled by the fact that she'd been a pet cat for a number of years. And the great thing about outlet homes is, I mean, look, how fantastic it is going to wash from a cow in the morning and to commune with a donkey. You know, these cats are perfectly happy in their environment, blissfully so. And the great thing about an outlet is there are human beings on the periphery. So if these cats, all they needed was a little bit of a sense of control, a little bit of space around them, and actually they don't mind rubbing around the legs of the odd humans, then they can still do it. But nobody's trying to control them and catch them and take them in and turn them into a pet cat. So outlet homes are wonderful, and I was so excited this morning to hear that Robin and his team are looking for these outlets, getting them ready in preparation. There's no point in searching for them after the event. Getting them ready and say, right, we've got the perfect little working cat for you. I love the idea of working cats. Of course they won't work for us, they'll work for themselves, but that's okay. That doesn't matter. So let's look at challenging facts. Here's the number one. The optimum socialisation of kittens requires knowledge and skill. Now, those of you who are fosterers, who care for kittens in your home, you will know there's science behind this. And just like us, there is an element of nature and nurture. There's genetic components to who they turn out to be at the end. And there's the early nurturing. Just like us, we need a bit of both to balance in the right way. Kittens have a sensitive period between 2 and 7 weeks of age. And during that time, their brain is really growing and really receptive to finding out about this new planet they've been born into. And they learn about relationships with other cats, with people, with dogs, what a home is like. And all of this in that little window as they open their eyes until 7 weeks of age. So it's a massive responsibility to literally teach those kittens what it is like to live in a domestic home with humans. And a lot of research has been done into this because people now realise if you don't get it right, the cat potentially suffers for life. So we know that if the kittens are handled by 4 or more people, and a variety, men, women, children, tall people, short people, people with beards, people with glasses, the whole sort of gamut of what they might actually have to meet later on in life, that they generalise to the human population as a whole. If you just rear with just a single woman, they tend to think men truly are from Mars. They don't recognise them as the same species, or children. So men, women and children, short periods of time. You only need 30 to 60 minutes a day of really positive interaction with those kittens to make all the difference. And this is the key, positive experiences. Not, oh, I must do it, right, pick up the kitten, shake it, talk to it, do whatever. It's got to be when the kitten really looks like they're in the mood. And at this point, you include other species as well. Dogs are really important. It's good that cats should learn to live with dogs. Cats and dogs together is a fantastic combination. I'm not saying necessarily the species on that list there, but it just shows you. And I'm not sure this little chap here is, the chat with the orangutan, I'm not sure that's such a good thing going on there, but he's pretty much pinned down and the orangutan is having fun. So, okay, so also part of that is social referencing, which basically means getting a cat used to what it's like to live in a home. And this is about car journeys. Terrifying if you don't know what they're all about. Vacuum cleaners. They are the work of the devil, unless you know what they're all about. Cat carriers, different floor coverings, televisions, radios, leather sofas, fabric sofas, all these different things. Collars, harnesses. And if you manage to let the kitten explore these in a very gentle, positive way, they have this blueprint. Oh, yeah, I know. Okay, I know what that is. So it doesn't come as a shock to them later in life. Now, socialising kittens isn't just about spending time with them. And Lindsay shared this photograph with me. There's a very well-meaning team of people in the United States that want to socialise feral kittens. And they think, well, we're so busy. So the best thing to do is to create a little jacket that has a marsupial pouch within which we can zip them. And then we can carry them around with us, and then we can spend time with them. Okay, now I can see your faces. That's sort of what I was thinking, but it was done with the right intentions. So it just shows you that we do get some misconceptions in this sort of joy and the excitement of what we're doing. Sometimes we do, we're a bit misguided. So there, anyway, it doesn't look like that, socialisation. Right, common misconception number 2, and this is a really sad one. Love conquers all. You know, we're a social species. Love is such an important thing for us, and you know, if you love an animal long enough, you'll realise how wonderful people are. And so I thought about this, and I thought, well, how many of us can say that they've actually successfully nailed most of the relationships we have with other people? I mean, it's hard, and that's our own species. So how can we be absolutely sure that we're getting these relationships right with cats? I mean, this looks beautiful, but do we really fully appreciate what's in it for the cat? And this is such a key point, and this is my sort of mantra. This is what fuels my work. We all need to understand when we're working with cats the difference between caring for them and caring about them. Now, you might think that that's just a couple of words different there, so I don't really understand what the difference is. But when we care for cats, because we're caring, nurturing people, we are fulfilling our needs as a human being. These are our emotional needs to care for and to nurture and to love. If we care about cats, We can still love the species, but there's a massive amount of respect in there for the other, for them. And we start to learn about the species. Well, what motivates you? What do you need? And then make sure that we fulfill those needs. So that's the key. This is where we need to be. We need to be caring about cats and channeling all that wonderful love we have and enthusiasm into caring about them. So, okay, what does a cat want? A cat, if asked, and if they were able to communicate, would say, come on, we're a self-reliant species. We need to maintain a sense of control. Please don't try and tell us what to do. We'd like to initiate contact. We'd really like to know when all the planets are aligned when it's a good time for us to come and have a bit of a cuddle. We do not want that to be at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when we're curled up asleep. We want that to be when we want it. And what they want from us is, can you just be predictable and consistent? So if I come up to you and do this, can you always do that and nothing else? Because it's very confusing when 1 minute you do that and then you do something completely weird. So just be predictable. And if all those things are in place, allowing them to maintain the sense of control, us being predictable and consistent, that's when we have positive encounters with our cat. That's when we look secure and familiar, and that's when bonds develop. Now, when you look at how cats interact with each other, that's not a bad place to start, is it, to find out, how we need to behave. Cats that are bonded have lots and lots of little interactions with each other, but they're very low key, very low intensity. So the two cats will glance past each other as if they're going, all right, yeah, all right, and they move on. That's it. They never go, oh my goodness, how lovely to see you. They never do that. So maybe we could take a leaf out of that book. And there was a really interesting study from 2011 where they looked at loads and loads of owners of their cats and the sort of relationships they had with them. And while they were at it, they scored the owners on a scale for neuroticism. So basically how sort of they couldn't control their moods and, a bit sort of, woohoo. So they found that those who were really scored highly for the trait of neuroticism had the least amount of contact with their cats, despite the fact they were the ones that wanted the most. And the theory being that the more they're chasing them round, like this, the more the cats go, oh my goodness, what on earth is going on there? And actually the ones that scored lower and said, well, my cat will come to me if he wants me, I'm not going to crowd him or anything. The cat would make much more advances to that person because that person looked intrinsically safer. How ironic is that? So these are the sort of lessons that we need to learn from cats, and they do show us. And we've got an example here of how low intensity, high intensity our interaction is with our cats. And one thing I absolutely love is just being in the same room as a cat. That gives me a great deal of joy. I don't focus on the cat, we're both doing our own thing, but it feels good. And yet when you look at all the different things that we can do, and you look at the bottom, picking up and holding. Now, for a cat whose response to danger is to escape, can you imagine what it feels like to have all 4 feet taken off the ground and to be restrained? Now, we know what we're doing. We're cuddling, we're holding, we're bonding, we're kissing. But to a cat, that feels, hang on a minute, what on earth is going on here? And that's when you find they push away or struggle or whatever. And you also see that fairly high intensity, just below that on a level of bigness, is watching constantly and talking continuously. And, I work on my own with my cat, and I could easily fall into the habit of going, oh, this is a difficult thing I've got to write here. Come on, JP, give me a hand here, whatever. Oh, what are you doing, JP? I could do that, but I don't. And it works. So you wouldn't think that watching and talking continuously could be so high intensity. But it just doesn't have an equivalent in the cat world. And if it did, it would be hostile. Interesting. Ooh. And also the life stage makes a difference. Kittens will want us to play with them more. If you really want the cuddly stuff, then go for the geriatric and the elderly cats, because they become the lap cats. They're the ones that spend more time resting or asleep and appreciate the benefit of our warmth and our secure smell. I did a survey many years ago in '95 of over 1,000 cats over the age of 12, and over 80% of the owners reported their cats have become more affectionate, more demanding of attention, more sociable as they get older. So if somebody really wants that sort of relationship, then maybe we should think, well, maybe we've got some oldies who would appreciate that. They still don't particularly want to be fiddled with, but they just like the thought of being able to sit on a lap. So maybe we should start to listen to cats to see what they actually want from us. So let's look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Here we are, sorry about this. Now, Abraham Maslow, he was a psychologist, and in 1943 he wrote a paper. And his paper was very exciting and very new, and he was talking about what motivates humans, what gets them up in the morning, what takes them forward, what makes them human. And he had this theory that everything that people are motivated to do is in the form of a pyramid, and your foundation stones need to be laid down before you can move higher up that pyramid, okay? So he talked first of all about physiological needs. Breathing, food and water, sex, sleep, homeostasis, which basically means keeping the balance of your body, okay, excretion, the basic physiological needs of being human and being alive, basically. So the first thing you need to do is make sure you stay alive. The next thing you think about is security and safety. Security of your body, your employment or whatever. Nobody's going to be worried about that if they're starving to death. Nobody's going to worry about that if they're sleep deprived or they're dehydrated and becoming sick because of the lack of water. So once all those things are fulfilled, you then go on to, I can have a good job, family, home and this sort of thing, property. And then when you feel secure on that basis, you reach out for friendships, intimacy, family, to belong to a community. So all the social stuff comes in. And then once that's established, you can talk about self-esteem, confidence, how people view you, how you view them. And then if you're absolutely nailed all of those, you can then sort of transcend into a higher, fully functioning human being, you see. But I thought that's very interesting. And Lauren Finker looked at that and said, I wonder what the cat's hierarchy of needs looks like. Well, very interestingly, we start off with the same foundations. Basic physiological functions, food, water, comfortable temperature, good environment, being able to go to the toilet. And then again, this is looking spookily familiar, safety, secure access to resources. This is where the territorial species comes in. They need to make sure that everything they need to survive is in close proximity because they're self-reliant, they're not a social species. And then, at the point where we're talking about having a family, relationships, they're still worrying about the environment. Is it predictable? Is it safe? They're constantly looking to maintain that sense of safety. They want that further stamped. And only then, so all of those things have to be in place first, but they even consider having a relationship with us. So you can see the difference, can't you? So much more needs to be put in place. And it's things like this that actually inform the way that the cats are treated when in your care, because we understand that it's all about predictable resource access, safety, and basic physiological functions before we start trying to create a bond with them. Okay, challenging fact number 2. Sometimes less is more. Now, you all know the phrase. Have you heard the phrase used in the context of cats before? It's quite common in veterinary practice. When we talk about handling in veterinary practice, we also say less is more. The more you pin a cat down and scruff it and do these things, the more it will resist. You've got to be confident and brave, and actually then the less you handle it, the more compliant the cat quite often is. And again, this taps into that number 1 guiding principle within cat-friendly homing. And what we're talking about here is the know your limit stroke capacity for care. And this is the Million Cat Challenge, the US version. They call it capacity for care. I suppose our equivalent is know your limits. And what we're looking at is the number of cats and kittens that you can care for optimally, so the best possible care you can give regarding monitoring them, housing them, responding to their needs physically and emotionally. That is your capacity for care. So sometimes having less cats is more. You can give them what they need. Okay, so that is not necessarily equal to the number of cats that you can physically accommodate in your facility. And this is, one of those challenging facts stroke unpalatable truths. Because if you do constantly fill because you feel obliged to fill because you've got that much capacity, how could you possibly not? You actually reduce their welfare potentially. And this is why what Peter was talking about this morning is so important. And it's about that liaison and collaboration with other organisations so that you manage that wider population of cats. So let me give you an example, okay? This is a cattery with a capacity of 25 cats, okay? Every pen is full. The staff are working valiantly and bravely flat out, really long hours. And because they just don't have the time, they're firefighting, each cat is not being carefully monitored. And unfortunately, some of them are becoming chronically stressed or distressed, and it's not being identified because they've shut down a bit, they've gone a bit passive. And unfortunately, as a result of that, their immune system is being compromised, it's changed, and there's an outbreak of cat flu. And it's swept through the cattery due to the stress and the overcrowding, and the cattery is shut down. It's closed, no cats in, no cats out, until this outbreak has been handled. More work for the staff, more stress for the cats. In an 84-day period in that cattery, a total of 6 cats have been rehomed. Average length of stay, over 6 months. Look at the same cattery. 25 pens, 10 pens are empty. Got 15 cats in. Staff are working thoroughly, efficiently, happily. Each cat is carefully monitored. Any changes or signs that they're not coping, jumped on. They're managed well. They look happy, they're comfortable, they've got good welfare, they're selling themselves well. Cats rehomed in an 84-day period. Same 84-day period, 70. Average length of stay, 18 days. Why would you not maintain your capacity to care? Okay, number 3, common misconception. Cats can be socialised with people later in life. So if they've missed out on that 2 to 7 week thing, it's okay. They can come into us for rehabilitation and we'll work with them and we'll socialise them, which sounds great on paper. Now, inadvertently, it is possible with the best intentions and with lots of love to actually cause psychological damage. And it's a thing called flooding. Now, flooding we might do as humans for other humans who have a phobia, maybe arachnophobia, they don't like spiders, and then they have cognitive therapy with a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and they're able to hold a tarantula in their hand while they have this cognitive therapy. So their phobia is being flooded. Well, we can't give cats cognitive therapy. So what happens is we flood them with something aversive, and unfortunately that's us, and we don't allow them to escape from it. And we do it for prolonged periods of time until that cat is completely broken, has no way of dealing with it. So again, it disassociates and shuts down. So we can flood not just by touching, but by the way we house cats who feel this way about us, the way we clean them, the general husbandry, the noise level routines, any number of these things. And the consequences of that is a psychological phenomenon called learned helplessness. These cats learn that they are helpless. They're not self-reliant at all. That's a myth. They're helpless. Because when something else happens that they would normally have all these strategies to avoid, they don't do them because they've learnt they don't work. So they become very, very flat. And what it looks like, and this is the really spooky thing, they become less responsive, less reactive, they rest, they sleep. Might be thought they look more comfortable. They become more tolerant of human interaction. They even appear, I'm doing this, friendlier. Vocalization may go down, they may be less destructive. They may be less aggressive. So of course, if you look at it superficially, you'd say, well, good job. Cat loves us now. But actually the welfare has gone down enormously. Very unpalatable truth. And then we have traumatic bonding, and thank you to Lauren Finker again for sharing this equally unpalatable truth, that when cats suddenly in the centre start off very, very nervous and then go on and become all very over-friendly, you think, whoa, hold fire, little one, that's a bit much. Gosh, you're friendly. You've been hiding that. Actually, they're not. They're just trying to avoid being killed. And this is akin to Stockholm Syndrome, which was so named because back in the 60s there was a bank siege in Stockholm, and the captors were in fear of their lives, but actually formed this strange emotional bond with their captor. And it was their body's way of making them keep safe by forming this. It's the only way they could survive. So that's pretty frightening too. Okay, cats are hard to read. Is that not true or what? They are, aren't they? I think they're hard to read. And, blame their ancestors for this, because their ancestor, look, there he is, the African wildcat, is a solitary species. So as such, they have not evolved with lots of expressive emotions on their face because they don't need them. They just need to back off. That's the only look they need. And as well as not being outwardly expressive of the mood they're in, which makes it very difficult for us, they also have this motivation to hide signs of pain because it makes them vulnerable. And can you imagine how difficult it is in veterinary practice to deal with that? Is that cat in pain? How much pain is that cat actually in? Very difficult. So what happens is we've got a blank canvas. And it's a bit like when we were kids, we played with dolls or toys. You'd have a conversation, a relationship with your doll. Your dolly could be whatever you wanted it to be. And it's kind of like that with a cat. The interpretation of the behaviour in the relationship is based on our perception of the world. It's based on our own personal beliefs about relationships. So we can basically believe anything we want to believe because the cat will never say you're wrong because they're so ambiguous in the way they behave. So, let's look at this is a typical cartoon greetings card. The top of it says there's a dog and a man jumping about, there's flowers, there's butterflies and rainbows, it's all rather lovely, and the dog's going, we love each other and we're best friends and we love each other and I like squirrels and love and stuff. The dog's a bit sort of ditzy and cute, but love is in the air and they're both having a good time. And then you go down to the rather sad female owner looking down on her cat, and even the cat's face cannot be seen by the viewer, slightly turned to make him even more mysterious. And the cat's saying to her, go away, come back, I like you. No, I don't. Let me out. Give me a treat. I love you. Go away. Carry me. Whoa, all that sort of ambivalence that some of us can relate to in our own relationships with other people. What on earth do you want about what you want from me? And here it is, acted out in this cat, because their behaviour is so hard to read that, is this a mixed message? You blow hot and cold. This is how we see them. So I just want to show you this film. This cat is doing very little, but it's saying a lot. This is the lovely Juliet from Wood Green who's allowed us to use this, which is fabulous. Right, you can just see she's unbolted the door, so immediately the cat sitting on top of the chair, if you can see it, is alerted to the sound, and he's lifting up his head. And he's watching. There's no forward movement, and he's sniffing, sniff, sniff. What is going on? Am I safe? Am I in danger? Do you see the tongue comes up to the nose, the yawn, displacement activity, the looking away? This cat is very unsettled. She introduces a high-value food treat. The cat says, I don't want it, turning away. I want it, I don't want it, still licking his nose. In a minute, he'll sort of smell the food, and he'll do almost like a pretend eating of it. He starts to lick his lips. You see, he's smelling, I really want it, but I can't because I'm in danger, so I'm going to pretend like I've eaten it. Starts to lick his lips. And, again, the finger goes forward. Juliet's absolutely fine. She knew what she was doing. And so the cat's looking down now, hoping that Juliet would just go away. Looking up because she's moved her hand. Where is she now? I've got to keep her in sight. And Juliet is now going to push her hand a bit further forward. See how the cat moves back. And what's happening is he's shifting his weight so that all his 4 feet are there, ready to cope with the onslaught that is bound to happen. She's going to attack him any minute. And all the time licking his nose, doing small displacement activities on his side. So do you see what I mean? There's not much going on there, but so much of it told such a big story. You have to learn to really read the micro expressions and the micro movements that cats make, and sometimes it's the absence of behaviour that speaks so much. So I just wanted to say, right, Michelangelo, we all love him, don't we? Great lover of cats, you can see by his art. And he did this saying, and he said this quote, which I live by, when he was 87. So he's really old, and you think by then you'd know most of the things that are going on in life, wouldn't you, really? He said, I am still learning. Yeah? And that, to me, is the joy of what we do. No matter how much we do, we never know enough. We can always know more. Every day we learn. It's a wonderful way to be, and it's a very exciting and dynamic and vibrant thing. So thank you very much, Michelangelo. That was lovely. And I just want to share this with you. Thank you for listening. And look at this little kitten. This is an armour. Nobody did this. This is really good. Nobody actually fell asleep. So I'm very grateful for that. Oh dear, here he goes again. Here's go. Oh, there you go. Thank you very much.
Vicky, for that. We've now got time for some questions if anybody has any questions they would like to direct to Vicky.
My cats are primarily indoor cats, but I let them out under supervision. What are your thoughts on indoor cats?
Well, I'm a pragmatist, and I think in the best will in the world there are more cats than there are safe indoor-outdoor homes. And I think with indoor cats, you have to work that much harder. So you have to make sure that all the things they should naturally be doing in a dynamic environment, you can reproduce in some way indoors. Now, you say you let them out under supervision. I'll just share with you what JP and I do. JP is my little Burmese, and I got her sort of middle-aged, and she doesn't do road. She's a bit of a sort of crazy ditzy Burmese, and I live on a road that's one of these dangerous roads. Nothing happens, and then somebody does a cut through at about 40 miles an hour, you know. So I secured my garden with a system of inverted brackets with very fine netting. Nobody can come in, she can't get out. How liberating for both of us, really. Little cat flap in the door. You don't even have to worry about an exclusive entry cat flap. You just any old cat flap, you know. And she comes and goes 24/7. It's wonderful. Now, I know that that's an expensive undertaking. Some gardens or environments don't lend themselves to that. If you create this positive experience in a small space, then they have, again, associations with that area and are more likely to say, because it's a bit like hunting. They're thinking, oh, I'm hunting, and this is where I hunt. And you can sort of do that with them when you go outside. So, I mean, as you know, Sarah, it's never going to be ideal. But for cats where we can't allow them unrestricted access, it's a better life than some alternatives.
I've recently started working for a charity, and they rescue and rehome feral cats as part of. I was told, unless the paper and blanket are soiled,
yes,
don't change the paper, don't change the blanket,
yes,
because of the scent,
yes,
and they need it so that the stress stays minimal and immune system strong. So I was just wondering about your thoughts on daily cleaning.
Yes. It's a balancing act. Always a balancing act, particularly with cats. Remember, they're a territorial species. Their primary sense is their sense of smell. So how their surrounding smells informs them of whether they're safe or not. And particularly when you're dealing with the population, I think you mentioned that these were feral cats.
Yes.
So, I mean, these are cats who are way off the scale on stress anyway. So whatever you can do to manage that stress, you do it. And you've got to balance the disease risk with the risk of them having so much stress, it compromises their immune system and they become susceptible to contagious and infectious disease. That's the balance. And it's sometimes difficult for regular pet cats who are just not coping very well with being confined. You might spot clean. But when it comes to the feral, you almost push that a little bit further. So, you know, their pen may look a little bit messier because every time you invade that little bit of personal space they've got, you risk compromising that immune system even further. So it is a balancing act, and it looks and feels so counterintuitive, particularly if you've been schooled previously with dogs where, you know, hygiene and everything is absolutely paramount. We're not saying hygiene isn't paramount, but when you look at the cat's ability to have their immune system crash due to stress and unwanted attention from humans, we have to be very careful.
I've got a cat that's got a cat flap and loves to roam, loves to go out. He's quite old now. What is your advice if you go away for a holiday? He was very distressed. I put him in a cattery for a couple of nights and I would never do it again.
I mean, I have to say I completely understand where you're coming from. You've got a 17-year-old cat, and remember I was saying about the elderly cat survey where all those people said their cats are becoming more needy and more affectionate as they got older. Now, your cat sounds to me like he's 17, so what do we know about 17-year-olds? They love their routine. Maintain routines. Ideally, after a while, they get to know the sitter, if it's a regular sitter, and the sitter is requested to be as regimented as possible about the time they come in, what they do, and when they leave, so that the cat has a sense of timing of things. Now, if you know that he's got no brain deterioration, he's not doing crazy things, doesn't look like he's becoming forgetful. Started. Now, I'm not surprised. Confusion sets in very quickly. And ability to navigate around familiar places gets pretty much shot to pieces. You may have to think about securing the garden. So I would say, in answer to your question, if I didn't answer it, I would leave them at home with a predictable care and maintain your routines.
Yeah. In your opinion, can you ever really fully socialise the feralness out of a feral kitten if you get them in their sensitive period?
That's such a difficult one, because if I was to speak generally, would be one answer, and then there would always be somebody in any audience that would say, well, I've done it successfully. And I've worked with so many feral kittens over the years who've been adopted from rehoming charities who have taken feral kittens off the street and worked with them and rehomed them as pet cats. And those that I've seen have not done so well. With the lack of knowledge, many, many years ago, I took on a little spitting 6-week-old thing that was found in a hedge near death, came into my vet practice, and I did the usual, so cute, love conquers all, I'll have it, you know, and I took her home, and I don't think I could touch her till she was 16. So, you know, it does really depend. You can put the socialisation into the kitten, you can do all the right things like that, but you've got to make sure that the association with the socialisation is positive. Now, the problem is, if you've got feral genetics, if you've got genetics that says, I'm not predisposed to be sociable, friendly or confident, then what you end up doing is risking all that psychological damage that we talked about with regard to learnt helplessness, traumatic bonding, etc. I kind of think that there are better solutions for feral kittens. In an outlet home, I think probably would work better. I think there are so many pet cats, proper, genetically, selectively bred pet cats who would benefit from that home that you're going to put the feral kitten into.
Okay, all done. And Vicky's staying for lunch if anyone thinks of any more questions. So.